Hey guys, Ace here. Just real quick, wanted to apologize in advance for some of the audio quality. There were some mic issues on either end. I just wanted to say sorry for that. Also, there were a few spoilers I didn't quite get to in this video. I will address them later if anyone's interested, but for now, just enjoy what we've got so far. Thanks. Hello everybody, I'm Ace League, and happy Sunday, I guess, is when this will be going up. I'm joined today by my friends from the Fear Mythos. Guys, care to introduce yourselves?
No.
I would introduce myself. I'm the somnambulist.
Right, so I'm here with the Somnambulist and Kiro Cloud Watcher, and today we are celebrating the 10-year day that I blew up one of my best characters.
Explodiversarry.
Yep. And that was part of a long-going project of mine called the Danielverse, which I haven't done anything with for a very long time, and I don't have any plans to get back to it. I do want to get Dark Subconscious fixed, fix all the bugs with it, and maybe work on a spin-off that I was planning for it, but other than actually continuing the story, I don't think I'm going to do that. But I do have a lot of ideas for potential storylines that I just want to talk about. So in other words, today we are going to be discussing Danielverse spoilers.
Ooh.
Alright, before we actually get into it, do you guys have any, like, of your own questions or guesses you want to throw at me?
Honestly, I can't remember where it left off.
I remember the last bit of it was, I resurrected Red Daniel, then I killed off Seraph, and Daniel got his powers back.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel with the fact that I do, honestly, really like the Danielverse most of the time, but I cannot remember who most of the characters are by name.
Yeah, Seraph was,
just how many characters there are, not, like, quality.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of characters, a lot of them were shit. Seraph was Daniel's girlfriend.
Yes, no, I do remember vaguely her. She had a girlfriend, at least. Sorry.
Yeah, I got like a bunch of talking points I want to go through. Some of them are going to be real brief, some of which might take a bit to talk about. The first one is a bandage I want to get off real quick. You guys know the Fury? For those of you who don't know that, he was a villain I had. I think he ranked 9 on my villains list. He was basically a human weapon of the archive who was just completely covered head to toe in bandages, was incredibly powerful, and never spoke. He only communicates by either text messaging or engraving words in nearby surfaces with telekinesis.
His name was the Fury or the Fury?
The Fury. He was named after
Okay, I couldn't tell how you pronounced it for a second.
Yeah, he was named after the Greek things.
Oh, the Furies.
Yeah. So, bandage I gotta rip off real quick.
Furry.
The Fury is Malkator.
Brought him back. Okay. Well, we see what else in the universe, Malkator. That is a possibility in the Danielverse, after all.
Yeah, so you guys are very muffled. I'm sorry, but
apologies.
What the deal was with that is Malkator was one of my best characters, and he canonically died December 11th of 2012, 10 years ago at the time of this upload. But the thing is, he didn't stay dead. This was something that the Ace of Chaos sort of hinted at the end of Phase 1. His exact words were that mana has a mind of its own, and Malcator, at the time of his death, was a wielder of chaos mana.
Yeah.
And what happened after his death was his mana spent itself in order to repair his body. But in doing so, his mana effectively exhausted itself and used up all its energy to barely get the job done. So Malcator came back, but he was still badly wounded and had no memory of anything that had happened. So not long after his revival, the Ace of Chaos's ghost finds him, and he calls in a favor with the blind man. So he gets taken by the archive, gets patched up, and used as effectively their tool. But his survival is something that only the alphas know about. Even Martyr Beta, who is the Fury's handler, didn't know who was actually underneath all those bandages. But I was eventually going to reveal it.
Yeah.
It was going to be like a intense duel between Daniel and the Fury, in which the Fury instinctively ends up activating his wings and arm blades, and additionally grows like some additional blades on like his forehead and shoulders that tear off like a bunch of his bandages, exposing his eyes and his torso mouth, which would cause...
I'm waiting for the torso mouth to show up.
Yeah, so that would be the point that Daniel realizes exactly who the Fury's been that entire time.
It's that guy.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
It would eventually culminate in like a final battle between them, in which, if I'm remembering correctly, the plan was for Mirror, who was Malcator's love interest, would end up becoming an enhanced, but like more of... She became like an ultra enhanced, just had Slenderman give her a shit ton of eldritch power. Then she like got between them.
Butterfly, right?
What?
It's like butterfly, right?
Yes, the butterfly. Yeah, she would end up like getting between them, and she'd kiss Malcator, kind of replenish his memories, and pass on all of her energy to him before she would inevitably die.
For me, I got some cool ranch Doritos.
Depressing.
Yeah, so not only did I fridge Sarah, but I had plans to fridge Mirror as well.
Yeah, I got good job. It's for you. Apparently, you'd like this.
Thanks.
You don't like this one?
I do. It's just, I don't know if you know what you just said. Anyways, I'll just put that down now. Hi, what's up? I just got handed a bottle of Fogo, guys. So yeah, I was trying not to comment on like, so your plan basically involved let's make two female characters for the sake of motivation. That's all it's fun. No. But I'm seeing that shit, so that's cool.
Yeah, I picked up some of that, but a lot of it was...
the rest.
God damn it.
Yeah, I didn't.
What is wrong with my microphone? Basically, what I was saying is, yeah, I was going to comment on the whole fridging thing, but I decided not to until you brought it up.
Yeah. But,
So, joke with Fago.
Later, I'm busy right now.
So yeah,
Well, I'm not streaming. I'm a very check it's being recorded.
anyway, what would effectively happen after that was that Malkator, having regained his memories, would end up turning on Beta.
Makes sense.
And Beta at this point would be wielding a sword that's kind of laced with a special poison specifically designed to harm demigods. So any human who has eldritch powers would be vulnerable to it. But
Makes sense.
he'd attack Malkator with it, but it wouldn't do jack shit, and he'd be like, "What's going on?" And Daniel would just like turn his attention to Beta and say, "You said that thing affects humans with eldritch powers, right?" And Martyr Beta would effectively confirm this, and Daniel would just look at Malkator and just say, "He's not human anymore." So this would be the reveal that, as the title of Malkator's blog suggested, he did eventually become a fear.
He became a god, essentially.
Yep, and at this point, like, the chitin that makes up all of his various blades and wings would like chip apart and fall away, and expose like serrated silver blades and like feathered wings underneath, and his
Cool.
his torso mouth would just heal up and vanish, and yeah, that would.
Desire explosives now.
Yeah, that would be about the end of Malkator's character arc, I think. He'd basically kill Beta after that, and that would be about all I had planned for him. He'd end up becoming like a helicopter dad to his son. That's another thing, that there were a few hints I left about the Fury's identity, like he just was randomly there when Mirror was getting birth with no explanation. But like the canon reason was that he was just instinctively there for his son's birth. Anyway, that's one talking point down.
So, I have a dumb question because I literally cannot remember this. Malkator's name has always been Benjamin, right?
Yes.
That wasn't just for the what's it called? I can't remember what's it called. Golden Age. What was it? What is it called? I'm losing my mind here.
Sandbox verse?
No, the thing we were doing with the Algernon and stuff.
Yeah, his name's always been Benjamin Malkator. I don't remember if I ever had a middle name planned for him.
Yeah, I remember him being called that, and my mind was just like, "Was his name Benjamin?"
Yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna get through a couple more of these quickly, but first, another character you all thought was dead. Gordon Taylor faked his death. He was the Yu-Gi-Oh guy.
Yeah, he was the brute follower guy.
Yeah.
I feel like I knew this already, actually. Or wait, no, I think this would be the second time he faked his death. Didn't he die once already, and then it turned out he wasn't dead, and then he died again in like Salo's second like Tailweaver trials, something like that?
Yeah, it's kind of complicated. Like, he originally died, then both he and Salo died, but then the blind man created replicas out of them using their memories. Then Memory Gordon died, but his rivalry with Memory Salo was strong enough that he kind of latched on, and they eventually kind of merged into a singular being before eventually dying as well.
That was in the Tailweaver trials that they showed up again, right? And then died again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but so the original Gordon actually did die.
He did die, but the Jack of All brought him back as a star spawn of Cthulhu. That's
Interesting.
another thing.
All right.
The Cthulhu entities are canon to the Danielverse, but they exist on a separate layer of reality.
Let's say they had shown up as Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but I don't remember if you'd actually brought any kind of Cthulhu stuff outside of the card games up until that point. Did you? I can't remember.
There was a little bit. Daniel and everyone briefly traveled to a layer of reality where he met a guy named Hasfiq, who's like a gray masked dude who has a tendency to call people by their full names. I never got to this in the stories, but Hasfiq is actually the half-human son of Hasfer.
That's interesting and makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway,
Is he in the Dark Conscious game?
yeah, he appeared as a bonus boss. It was in a place called Veredis Kalohela.
Yeah, because I realize that seems vaguely familiar.
Yeah. But yeah, so Gordon was brought back. The memory Salo Gordon hybrid, he did die shortly after his encounter with the Tail Weaver. But I remember there was like a brief post I uploaded that I advertised as being non-canon, which was a duel between Gordon and a revived Salo who was using a Scion deck. And the duel, kind of went with Gordon having the advantage up until like the very last turn when Salo like got his senses back and made a huge comeback.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, I lied. That was completely canon.
It just was in advance of when it was supposed to be, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so what happened was, like I said, the Gordon who died at the end of Calloway's blog, that was actually a Shogoth he created to resemble himself. That's why it kind of mutated towards the end of the duel, because its form was breaking down.
Okay.
But, like, real Gordon was still alive and well and just faked his death to kind of distance himself from things. And what he did was he recovered the soul of the memory Salo Gordon hybrid, revived it as a Shogoth who started out as Salo before eventually regaining the Salo Gordon fusion that it had earlier. And the plan was for the Shogoth Salo Gordon guy to eventually just kind of become his own character.
Can I just put your food away for when you're ready?
No.
You sure? That's gonna sound awful.
I'll do it away from the mic. It's fine.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so I was gonna have him just become a new character who I was gonna name Gosade. Just the stupidest fusion of their names I could imagine.
D sound comes from, but yes.
And he'd end up using a Lunar Light deck, which would be a series of cards that are simultaneously light and dark monsters. And he'd have like one of them would effectively be his pet that he'd like summon outside of duels to act as his familiar. It would be a solar light or lunar light rat bird.
Sounds adorable and also weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm eventually gonna write out the lunar light archetype and post it to the forum thread. But what kind of kills it is that they actually did release a archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! In real life after I had this idea called Lunalight. And so that's gonna make it a bit awkward.
Yeah.
You know, I actually thought Lunar Light was a real thing the whole time.
Yeah. Anyway, Gordon was eventually going to come back, and he would in fact end up being the first person to beat Daniel in a duel on screen.
Oh my god.
Yep. And then I also had a few things to say about Gordon's followers, namely Vase Verdith and Etra. Vase was the guy who used a Cold Boy deck, and yeah, we hear the kitty. And
Yeah, sorry.
and Etra
This
was
isn't
the
being done for
one.
money. We're very unprofessional.
Yeah, Etra was the elf girl who played the armored elf archetype, and for a little while played the eye archetype. They were both like Ghosaid, were people who were formerly killed but revived as Shoggoths. They'd both eventually have a breakdown similar to Pavoke and the fake Gordon, where they'd kind of mutate. I don't remember what exactly they were going to look like. I know Etra was going to get antlers, and Vase would have, like, crystals growing from him.
That's cool.
But, I did have a big plot twist in mind regarding Vase. So his backstory is that he was formerly a creation of the Marchin. And, the Marchin was killed, like, several centuries ago, which is another thing I'm gonna get to. But, the Marchin's power was taken by the Game Master and eventually given to the Tail Weaver. But the Marchin's consciousness managed to survive and latch on to the closest living thing it could find, which happened to be a dying half Jotun of its own creation. So yeah, the big reveal was going to be that Vase is actually what's left of the Marchin. And like, he'd eventually discover this. That's why he gained the Word of Truth card. It's a card that has a bunch of effects, and each time he activates it, it reveals a truth to whoever he's playing it against.
Mm.
And the truth, one of the truths he showed to Daniel is his identity, but he didn't know any of it himself, so only Daniel was aware of it at the time. But after he goes through his Shoggoth corruption, he'd retain his sense of self, but he would eventually, like, figure out that he has the Marchin's consciousness, and he'd eventually use that power to rewrite his own existence and regain his original form.
Who made the Tail Weaver again?
The Tail Weaver,
Was it Zach's quest?
it was Zach's quest who originally created him, then he, I think, passed it along to No Fourth Wall.
Yeah. I don't know, but didn't one of them actually bring the Marchin back as, like, the person in charge, and, like, the Tail Weaver was really working for the Marchin or something like that?
I don't remember.
All I know is, like, no offense to whoever was running it, it's not easy to run something, especially when you're just being handed it by someone else who just decided they didn't want to keep doing it. But, man, that got really complicated really quickly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Game Masters Tournament is an event that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to replicate, and I don't know if very many other people could pull it off either. But yeah, Vase was eventually going to get, like, his own copy of the Marchin card, and he'd eventually, like, come to blows with the Tail Weaver. That was, like, a thing I had in mind. Alright. So, moving on from there, I do have another character I wanted to talk about briefly. He was introduced in Phase 2, and he's only known as K for the longest time. His real name isn't known. All that's known is that he's very smart. He's hiding from the archive and doesn't want to be found by them. And he's knows a bunch of apparent magic tricks.
Yay, magic.
Okay, so this guy's actual identity, he is called the Knower. And his gimmick is that he's an artificial human created by the Archive with the intention of creating a vessel capable of infinite brain capacity.
That
So,
is very interesting.
so he can basically hold an unlimited amount of knowledge. And the thing is, when I wrote the Burning Bride into the Daniel verse, early ideas for her kind of had her being a being capable of forcing knowledge into people's brains and overwhelming them, causing them to usually suffer sensory overload. Like, it
Isn't that
didn't.
an original idea for the Flickering Woman?
Yeah, that was the flickering woman who eventually became the Burning Bride, who kind of veered away from that original idea. But I still use that in the Daniel verse. And what happened was she hears this idea that there's someone who has an infinite capacity for knowledge, and she's just like, okay, challenge accepted. So she goes after the Knower, attempts to overwhelm him with knowledge multiple times, and each time he just shrugs it off. So by the time she eventually gives up, he has just gained so much knowledge that he eventually just escapes the Archive and starts going into hiding from them. And a lot of the powers he displays, like he can just conjure up fire and lightning at will. And the thing is that he's not actually using any kind of magic in order to do so. The canon explanation to how he manages it is that he just knows how to.
He just has so much knowledge he can manipulate reality, essentially.
Pretty much. And one thing he did once, there's a thing about like demons and how they can be kind of sealed if you prepare a circle or whatever, but even that's usually not enough to fully restrain them. He displays an ability when one of the demon lords is around, where he just creates a magical circle around it out of sheer willpower, which I think eventually got broken, but it lasted for a little bit.
Cool.
And
Excuse me.
what he'd eventually do was he'd teach Daniel how to do that trick. And if
That's useful.
you know Daniel, he's stubborn as fuck. So when he learns to craft a circle out of sheer willpower, it proves to be nigh unbreakable.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get the feeling that the demons, and like the Bloody Bikers realm, I can't remember what it was called. Was it just called Hell? I don't remember.
It was just called Bloody Hell, which was a name that the biker ended up giving it.
Right. So I get the feeling those are going to be a lot more important eventually than they had been so far.
Like, I didn't have huge plans for them. I don't even know where the hell Zach's Quest and I were going with Elagaris the Reveler. But like, I did have.
I remember. Sorry.
I did have some things planned, I think.
I feel like what they originally, like the whole Damon thing was part of that thing Shadows was creating. Or am I remembering wrong?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Alright, and speaking of my collaboration with Zach's Quest, this might be obvious for anyone who was reading that blog, but I did have plans to kill off Isaac Ozalia. So,
Wasn't he like doomed to die anyways just by existing?
Yeah. So Isaac Ozalia was one of my protagonists who was a very powerful telepath, but because he underwent the enhancements, he was slowly dying. And what he did with his remaining time was he started he stole a school bus and started gathering together runners from the fears so that he could kind of form some solidarity between them and keep them safe.
Yeah.
And what would eventually happen is he'd cross over with Daniel for a bit, as well as Crystal, who was kind of a minor character, but she was part of Ozalia's original evil task force of Doom, and she actually, I never really went into detail of this, but she had a huge crush on Isaac. And it was early on that Malkator predicted that she'd have to watch the man she loved die someday.
Yeah.
And
Although, that seemed less like a prediction and more just statement of fact because of the aforementioned Isaac is destined to die anyways thing.
yeah, so
Wasn't he enhanced, or am I remembering wrong?
yeah, he was enhanced.
Yeah, and like all the enhanced basically have a shortened life
Yeah,
span, something like that.
I mean, in the Danielverse anyway, in certain other universes, like the Sandbox verse and Breaker's original universe, the enhancement project process was actually perfected so that they don't die out nearly as quickly. But yeah, Isaac was on borrowed time, and what would happen was he and or Daniel and Crystal would both be present for him as he was like slipping away, and he'd end up giving Daniel his tungsten glaive, and then he'd like bring up Malkator's death to Daniel, saying, "Malkator's last words to you were to save the world." And then he'd like gesture to all the runners he had been protecting up to that point, and he'd just say, "Start with them," before passing on.
Mm.
So yeah, for a while, Daniel would end up taking Isaac's place as their protector. And,
Yay!
and of course, he'd get another weapon to his collection.
Yay!
I'm gonna take a drink real quick. Hold up.
In the Sandbox verse, it's Isalia. Azalia. I just can't
Ozalia?
remember. Yeah. Who is in the conflict that like the I think one of it's not the Joker, it's one of the aces, I think.
Yeah.
Jumps in to save.
There was a conflict in the Sandbox verse where it was Sal with Justin's group against a bunch of emissaries. One of the emissaries who I never really confirmed but alluded to was actually Ozalia's cousin, Nola Rowe. But in that universe, she was known as the Ace of Cups.
Okay. What I was talking about that was in like the Sandbox version of the Game Master tournament. There was a fight. I believe it was one of the ones Faceless was involved in, which is why I'm remembering it. I think where before the killing blow could be struck, one of the I think it was one of the aces, but I don't remember. Interrupts the fight.
Oh right, that was
Who was that against?
That was Sal.
That was against Sal?
Yeah.
Okay, for some reason I thought that was Azalia.
No, Ozalia, it was canon to the Sandbox verse, but he was
He wasn't that guy. Okay.
Yeah, he was one of Sal's employees. He didn't have his full-on telepathy because he never underwent the enhancement, but he did have the hyper-intelligence, and he did have a special elixir given to him by Sal that, if he drank it, would temporarily amp up his powers to how they were in the Danielverse.
Okay.
But yeah, Sal was an interesting character. He was the son of the Ace of Spades and the Ace
That
of
was
Diamonds.
it. That's why she jumped in.
Yeah.
Because it was her son, right? Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
I love I love those spots I had him right when she basically declares vengeance against Facely. He's like, this is the one time I don't think I deserve this.
Yeah. All right. Now what do I want to talk about next?
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I think we can move on from that point. Let me talk about a character who was pretty interesting. In Phase 2, I introduced a character known as the Backer. His whole deal was that he robbed banks and used the money to fund a number of different other villains, and his plan was never really made clear to anyone. But there were notes that both Daniel and Burner said that his power seemed familiar, as if they'd been up against it before, and that the first time he ever speaks to them with his own voice, Daniel points it out to Tony and hey, that voice, and Tony just shrugs it off it's probably just a trick, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I've always had a little secret name that I use for the Backer that I never actually established with anyone else.
Oh?
I referred to him as Neo Sentinel.
Oh.
So, Sentinel was an interesting character. He was a version of Daniel who basically used this power of the Path of Chaos to go to different universes, kill variants of himself, and then absorb them to gain their powers. Who the Backer was, he is the Tony from the Sentinel's original universe.
Ah.
So that's why he seemed so familiar to everyone, was because he has Tony's voice and the Sentinel's powers. But
he is Tony Helio's son, right?
Yes, Tony, Daniel's best friend, very, very loosely based off my friend C-Rad.
I remember C-Rad. He was interesting.
Yeah, I considered contacting him to do this, but I know he doesn't have the best track record of being in a group chats with Fear Mythos members, so yeah.
I have nothing against the guy, but he could be difficult, I guess.
Yeah, he's
I liked him though, honestly.
He's my friend. He's like that one friend who's a dick, but he's my dick. And I'm not rephrasing that. But yeah, anyway, what Neo Sentinel had going for him over the original Sentinel is that he wasn't only limited to absorbing his own variants. He could absorb pretty much anyone, provided they were dead. And that's why he was funding so many people, was because he was secretly plotting to double-cross them so that he could gain their powers. And his endgame was he wanted to get revenge on his Daniel by killing the main universe's Daniel.
Yeah, that makes that follows logical.
Yeah, and that brings me
to a normal choice.
That brings me to a couple other characters I want to talk about real quick. A couple of the people he was funding, actually. There was Hall Malkator, who was an archive clone of the original Malkator.
I remember this character vaguely, I think.
And he was placed in charge of Styrum Inc., which was an organization that was secretly backed by the Game Master originally. And then Hall Malkator took over. And Hall Malkator had an interesting ability. Whenever anyone interacted with him, they always noted that there was something off about his voice, like it was coming from somewhere other than where he was standing. And he'd do a thing where he'd just summon duplicates of himself out of nowhere. His power actually is that he's able to control other people's sense of sight, but only their sense of sight, which would eventually be his downfall, as someone, probably either Daniel, who's got really good combat instincts, or Daniel, who's just not Daniel, but Calloway, who's just naturally instinctive, would catch on that that body
Couldn't
isn't where
trust
his
their eyes.
Yeah, they'd notice that body isn't where his voice is coming from. He's somewhere completely different. And that would eventually end up getting him killed so that a Neo Sentinel could claim his power.
Cool.
And then we had a Melior Monde, the leader of the Panopticon, murderer of Seraph, and probably one of the laziest names I have ever come up with. It's literally just French for best world. His middle name is very likely his middle name is very likely just the French word for possible.
Or just of all.
Yeah, but the reveal with him would be that the Game Master secretly founded the Panopticon and that he was an emissary.
Of course.
And he actually has the exact same default emissary power that Ozalia had, in that he's just got heightened intelligence. And what he can do is that he uses special machines to link his own mind up with other people's so that he can manipulate their memories.
Yay!
And of course, he'd also end up getting killed and absorbed by Neo Sentinel.
Yep. So basically, he's just backing people and helping them in the hopes of getting them killed so he can absorb them.
Pretty much.
Smart plan, honestly.
And he was also backing Diana Rose and Phantasm, but I don't know where their storyline was even going. I know that I had it set up so that Phantasm would be locked into whatever he'd basically become unable to regress to previous forms. To explain Sentinel, his power is escalation. He has 7 different forms that he's able to...
Phantasm.
Yes, Phantasm, right. He has 7 different forms that he can switch between, but we've only seen 4 of them in the Daniel verse, and 5... We've seen him get up to his 5th form in the Sandbox and Golden Age. For those of you who don't know who he is in the Sandbox verse, he is known as the Ace of Swords in that universe.
Cool. Ace of Swords is a cool name. Not as cool as the Ace of Chaos, but still.
Yeah. But yeah, I did have plans for him to eventually unveil further forms, but with each one...
He's the one who's also, like, Calloway's dad secretly, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had plans to show off more of his forms, but I don't know what I had planned beyond that.
Yeah.
Alright. And then, speaking of characters that I wasn't really sure where I was going with them, who remembers Puppy Dog?
Puppy Dog, did he exist outside the Sandbox verse, or was he specific to the Sandbox verse? I can't remember.
He was...
Or was he? No, he was in a completely different verse, wasn't he?
He did start out in the Daniel verse.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of the version of Jason, I think his name is.
Jason.
Maybe not Jason. What's the name of the main character of Dark Subconscious? I'm forgetting.
Justin.
Justin. I think I was thinking of the version of Justin who's has his own blog in the Sandbox verse, I think.
Yeah, Puppy Dog.
I think I was confusing him with Puppy Dog.
Yeah, Puppy Dog, his deal, I don't remember if I ever had a canon name for him. But
other than Puppy Dog.
Yeah, Puppy Dog was just an insult that Daniel called him because he was a timber wolf that eventually that basically just became an appropriated appellation.
Yep.
Anyway, I don't remember like what I was gonna do with him exactly. I know he'd eventually undergo a heel face turn, but when I created him, what I wanted to do when starting phase 2 was kind of recreate what I did starting off phase 1 and have someone else start a blog right before Daniel did. Like Malcolm Aster. like Malkator came just briefly before Daniel did, so I created a character to come just before Daniel in Phase 2. And I think the initial idea for Puppy Dog was that he'd eventually learn to adapt to facing different demigods and eventually just become a professional demigod hunter, which was an idea I ended up using in the Golden Age for a completely different character.
Yeah, I remember this. Also, I can't remember exactly, but wasn't Puppy Dog gonna become an apostle like the last time we saw him? Something like that?
I think it was setting up for him to be heading in that direction. I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly, but I feel like there was like I feel like one of the last things I remember at least was the somewhat bitchy apostle lady basically hinting to him that he was about to be given powers.
I'm not
But
sure.
I could be wrong. I could be entirely wrong.
That might have been the case. I'm not sure. But speaking of apostles, I do need to confirm a few things about them.
Yeah.
Okay, so first apostle I got to talk about. There were, I think, 13 total apostles. There was Maria Silver, who was originally the angel's halo, but she died off screen, and I don't remember how or why she died. But spoiler alert is that her soul ended up becoming the devil's halo, which is the scythe wielded by Justin towards the end game of Dark Subconscious.
That's cool.
Then there was Matt Onry, the angel's tongue. His gimmick was that he can compel people to do whatever he says. And I'm kind of proud of what I did with his name because, interestingly enough, it is actually an anagram of Metatron, who is the biblical voice of God.
Makes sense. I was gonna say like something about his name seemed weird.
Yeah.
I couldn't put my finger on why. I'm usually better at catching anagrams like that though.
All right, then I don't remember what exactly I had planned with Lashia Lorraine or Lazarus Frayne, but I think my deal with Lashia, or not, Lazarus was that his blood possesses healing properties or something. I don't remember.
Sounds for a character named Lazarus.
Then there was Joseph Krell. His whole deal was that he is an expert marksman, and he has the power to make his skin invincible, but in doing so, he fatigues his body. But then the two apostles who I really got to talk about would be Nikolai Wells and Adon. So Nikolai, his thing is that his weapon of choice is like a trinket that's like a razor-bladed trinket that he keeps at the end of his chain that he whips around to hurt people. And he's displayed the ability to repair any type of inanimate object. But the true nature of his power is actually time manipulation. He's basically able to reset objects to a previous state of being. But the problem with his power is that he can't reset a soul. So his powers won't work on anything that's alive or ever has been alive.
Yeah.
And
That's
then,
not
go
helpful.
on.
That's not helpful.
Yeah. But there was one interesting exception is the character of Adon, who is the leader of the apostles, wields a mercy giver called Gaudemash, which means something in some language, but I forgot what it was. But his deal is that he's just generally an inhuman-looking being. He never blinks, never breathes, is completely immune to the effects of wielding a mercy giver, which they usually drain people of the ability to feel emotions, which some people like Paradan are kind of resistant to.
Yeah.
But the reveal concerning Adon was that the man we've known as Adon was eventually going to be revealed as effectively just a meat puppet being piloted remotely by the real Adon, who was just like a dying old man in a hospital bed somewhere.
Cool.
Which is why he was able to wield the Mercy Giver, because he's not wielding it directly. And it's also why Nikolai is able to heal him, which he's done a few times. There's a necklace Adon wears that is kind of linked to Nikolai's trinket that lets him feed energy through his trinket so that it goes into Adon's pendant and allows it to restore damage done to his body. But yeah, other than that, I don't remember what was going to go on with them. I think Puppy Dog was eventually going to find Adon's real body and put him down, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of Mercy Givers, I planned to eventually have like 5 of them. There was, I know in a Dark Subconscious there was a bit in the Streams of Destiny where you can see a video that shows you like images of future events. I don't remember what all of them meant. I know one of them was hinting at a clash between Justin wielding the Devil's Halo and Daniel wielding the Fear Sword, which is something I'm going to get to in a bit. There was also some imagery hinting at Red Daniel's revival, as well as some stuff about Faceless potentially coming back and defying the Convocation or something. I know
He's done that quite a bit since then, so...
Yeah, and there was also a shield that I have no idea what I had planned for.
Aw.
Where was I getting? Right, there was also an image of 5 swords. There was the long sword, which was Khalidfalsh, which was wielded by Diana Rose. There was Gaudemash, which was wielded by Adon. There was another sword that was kind of like a Buster Sword. I don't remember what I had planned for that.
Aw.
Then there was a Paradan's Rapier, and also a Katana. The Katana was going to come into play. Judgment was eventually going to come after Paradan wielding it, and Paradan would end up killing Judgment and claiming the Katana for himself, so he'd have a second weapon in addition to his rapier.
Cool.
And the thing with the Mercy Givers is that they always have like a chant that goes with them, which is Blade of Darkness, deliver mercy to the wicked. But the katana being wielded by Judgment would end up having its own chant, which would be Blade of Darkness, deliver judgment to the guilty.
Cool.
Alright, I'm gonna try and breeze through a couple plot points I had planned. For one thing, Estrin would eventually become a new game master. I think it was the Red Joker who kind of reprogrammed his mask to kind of function as that role. And
probably.
And he'd kind of he wouldn't gain like the full-on cloak that the Game Master had, but he'd gain like a scarf made out of bats. And he'd end up hosting his own tournament, but he'd do so with the goal of like recruiting new servants to replace all the cards that Red Daniel and the High-Blooded killed off.
Yeah.
And he'd be a lot more open-minded than the Game Master was. The Game Master was a misogynist who had like women at one table, men at the other. Estrin would just do things completely different. He'd have female spades, male diamonds, just all inclusive shit.
Yay.
Yeah, I remember Game Master being like weirdly various forms of discriminatory from what I remember.
Yeah.
Sexist especially was the deal, which I believe wasn't that like part of the main reason he hated the Vision? It was basically just because she was female.
Actually,
I don't remember how much I'm remembering that correctly though.
well, his reason for hating the Vision was that he was actually in love with her, but then she ended up
All right, with
getting
the
with
Chaos,
the Ace of Chaos, which
who was way cooler than him, so understandable.
yeah. So that led to that whole rivalry. But
Right.
the Game Master actually did have a bit of respect for the Ace of Chaos, which is why he never killed him.
Killed him, yeah.
He instead just locked him up and left the self-destruct feature in the game, in the Ace of Chaos's mask, because he didn't want to kill the Ace of Chaos. He wanted to cause him despair so that he'd eventually
Killed himself.
yeah. But then someone, I think it was the Bloody Biker, let slip of Malcator's existence, which brought him a bit of hope, and he ended up just busting out of his bonds and going to save him.
Oh, hey, some of my descendants still exist? Cool.
Yep.
Sorry, some of my descendants and also potentially part of her.
Yep.
I forgot that aspect for a second.
All right. This one I'm just going to go through real quick because, like I said, I do have a spin-off of Dark Subconscious in mind that I want to get to, and I am going to reveal this plot point in that game, but I don't really mind spoiling it now because it's not too huge of a reveal. But there's a bonus boss in Dark Subconscious who was going to be the protagonist of this spin-off, whose name is Patricia. And
right, yes, she was also wasn't she also the main character of like that forum game?
Yeah, the forum game is what I was planning to remake into the spin-off.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but the reveal is that she's actually a there was a moment at the end of phase 1 of the Daniel verse where Daniel briefly interacts with a dying man shard called the Liar. And the reveal is going to be, I think I already mentioned this to you once before, that Patricia actually is a fragment of the Liar that she left behind. But because of some reason, probably just Daniel being too stubborn to possess, she ended up just losing all her memories.
I'm forgetting that like characters like the Liar and Faceless show up in your work.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, the interaction with the Liar. Like, oh, he did, right. Yeah, wow.
Oh yeah, speaking of Faceless, I actually do. There's a character trait of Justin's that I explored a lot in the Sandbox verse. He has a thing where he will only call someone by their preferred name if he has respect for them. Like, once he learns, like, the real names of, Algeria, Touchshriek, and, the Game Master, and I think there was someone else, but they all have... Quan, that was it. He just knows that they have, like, nicknames that they prefer to go by, but as soon as he learns their real names, he just calls them that just out of spite.
Because he's kind of a dick, but anyways.
Yeah, and then like if someone actually prefers going by their real name, he'll just come up with his own insulting nickname for them if he doesn't like them, which is the case with the character of Henry, whose last name I'm actually completely forgetting. But
I don't remember who Henry is.
He was a Slender proxy who got... They, at the beginning of Halo's break, Justin's team burned down a house, and resulting in him barely surviving and escaping with a bunch of burn scars. And so...
I don't remember this now.
So Justin initially just calls him Burn Scars Magoo, and then when he learns his name is Henry, he starts referring to him as Henry McBurn Scars. But it's eventually revealed like what this guy's real name is, and Justin just has a moment of, huh, could have sworn his last name was McBurnscars. Just kind of an asshole move on Justin's part.
Yep.
But
Yep.
what?
Just asking if Kira was still all right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I heard a noise and I couldn't tell if that was like just a sneeze or something.
No, laughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Apologies.
So yeah, Justin only uses someone's preferred name if he has respect for them. But there is actually one interesting exception to this rule. And that is the case with the Faceless Bastard.
Yep.
Justin pretty much exclusively uses his real name, Sergei Korchev.
Yep.
But like he's not doing it out of any sort of disrespect. He actually does have a great deal of respect for the Faceless Bastard. But he just uses his real name anyway, just because... I'm not sure exactly. Just because...
It's easier to say than calling him the Faceless Bastard every time.
Yeah, and like the two of them do like have a big rivalry going on throughout that game. In fact,
Yeah,
I know
it becomes still hatred depending on your choices.
Yeah, I know you love the asshole route, but I personally
Absolutely.
consider the rival route to be the most canon one.
Most likely, yeah.
In fact-
It definitely feels like the most canon for both of them.
In fact, I actually did have like an idea early on in Phase 2. I'll get to this later, but I was eventually planning to like revive all of the people from Dark Subconscious. Because at the end of Dark Subconscious, Justin makes a deal with Jack to bring all his friends back, which he does. He brings their souls back, and they exist in Daniel's subconscious again. But he also brings back their bodies, which end up becoming comatose in the real world. And they eventually end up coming back. And an idea I had since I had multiple blogs in Phase 2 is that like once Faceless is introduced into the picture, I would have each like 4 of the different blogs start to go off in different directions, and the reveal would be that each of the blogs was actually following a different route with Faceless.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
Yeah, I don't
What
think...
are 3 different options, though?
Like, there were 4 main options. There was the friend, rival, grudge, and villain, if I'm remembering correctly.
I thought it was just the 3, and I remember them as friend, rival, and, like, nemesis.
Yeah, there was friend, which is, he's just, like, kind of nice with everybody from that point on. There's rival, where he's just, like, gets really competitive, particularly with Justin.
Yep.
There's the villain, where he's just, like, openly antagonistic towards everyone.
Yep.
And then there's the grudge match, or the grudge route, where he basically just gives everyone the silent treatment for the rest of the game.
I have no idea how to get that one. I know vaguely how to get the other ones,
Yeah,
but I did not know that one existed, I don't think.
yeah. He basically just gives everyone the silent treatment right up until the grotesque entry where he kind of just like unloads everything that's been on his mind.
Cool.
Although there is one scene, the talk between Justin and Faceless that happens in Justin's house where they like unlock their combo attack. That scene actually plays out exactly the same no matter what route you're on.
Isn't the combo attack different depending on what route you're on, though?
No, but
No, it's always the same?
Yeah, Faceless does get a different final ability in the grotesque entryway. In the friend route, he gets a revival ability called Helping Hand. Rival route, he gets a team power-up called Fighting Spirit. Grudge route, he gets just a intimidation ability that lowers enemy stats. And then villain route, he just gets the merciless attack.
Yeah. I said this before, but I just want to say you do really good at capturing Faceless's like mannerisms when writing him. It's
Thanks.
impressive. I do not think I could write any of your characters as accurately as you write Faceless.
All right, that is an entire page off of this done. I only have like a few more talking points left, I think. Next up we have Garrot Ferris. This is also a little something that was kind of hinted at the Visions of the Future. There's like a small orb of green flame. And there's also a boss fight against Garrot Ferris in Dark Subconscious that shows him with his right arm engulfed in green flames. And the big reveal regarding Garrot Ferris, the first devil killer and ancestor of Daniel Ferris, he was actually a huge asshole. Total supervillain.
Oh, lovely.
Yep, he actually was allied with the Game Master, and he's the reason the Marchin and the Answer aren't a thing anymore. He's the one who killed them all off.
Cool.
And like it got to a point that the Fears were like, okay, we need to do something about this guy. And so what they did was they created a green flame known as the Shackle that they embedded into his right arm.
Ah.
And what the Shackle does is it actually does empower him. He can actually wield the flames, but it also locks him into one plane of reality. It prevents him from using the God's way at all. And then they just locked him up somewhere and threw away the key.
Yay!
Of course, he would come back and pose a threat, but I don't even remember what all I had planned with him. I also don't remember...
Yeah, do you keep notes on this stuff? And just like, you don't know where the notes are, or you just didn't bother to keep notes for some of this?
I didn't bother to keep notes. I just spent the last couple days, like, jotting down every forgotten plot point that came to mind. Speaking of, I have no idea what I was going to do with Decidia. I do kind of have an idea for his backstory. There was early on.
That would be the final boss of Dark Subconscious, right?
Yeah.
That we're talking about? Okay.
There were some implications early on in Phase 2 in Tony's notes that the Ace of Chaos had at some point done battle with another time traveler. It would be revealed that Decidia is actually a fusion of the Archangel and Slender Man from a completely different timeline.
Cool. So that's what Decidia is? He's a time traveler from another thing that basically just gained enough power. How is he in Daniel's head? I don't remember how that got established.
He was like banished or something like that at some point in the past, and Jack actually summoned a fraction of his power into Daniel's mind as like a last resort against Justin, basically.
Okay. So, it occurs to me, I don't remember if Dark Subconscious ever actually answered some of the questions, such as where actually is Daniel. I don't know if that actually got answered.
Yeah.
It has been a while since I played it, though.
Yeah, excuse me.
No worries.
I did have plans for Daniel to like regain the ability to communicate with the souls inside of him, and also have him like regain full control over the Fear Sword, because that's how that's how he lost his powers in the first place. Is that he had a desperate moment where all the power he had absorbed up till that point manifested as a sword, but then it all dissipated after his fight with the Sentinel.
Yes, okay, I do remember that. Yeah, the answer to the question of where has Daniel gone has nothing to do with the plot of Dark Souls, because it turns out it's just, oh yeah, he kind of lost his powers, so we can't talk to them right now. I completely forgot that was the actual reason.
Yeah, and then it was all right, Kiro's taking a break. That's fine.
Okay. No worries, Kira.
I got up super early today. I think I woke up around the time you guys posted in the Discord. And then I was just like, I didn't want to do this on having just woken up brain, so I took some time, had an amount of coffee, and then just spent my time just prepping myself for this, basically.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I might actually just go grab a drink anyway, so give me just a second.
All right.
If that's okay.
That's fine.
I am back.
All right.
How are you doing?
Doing all right. All right. Well, while we're waiting for Kiro,
Yep.
guess we'll just do some small talk.
Sure.
Yeah, I played a.
I thought of something really stupid I could say.
I played.
So, anyways, how's your work on the next post of the sandbox going?
Well,
I'm sorry, that's mean.
I know. I really do want to get that finished. I actually no longer have I can probably I think I sent it to you, so I can probably go back and dig it up, but I no longer have the original document for it.
Yeah, like I say this not like actually blaming you or anything like that, but like I cannot continue Face's story until that's done. So
I know.
I'm just like someday.
Yeah. So I played through Sonic Frontiers.
Oh, how's that?
I mean, it was fun. I got a couple minor gripes with it. Like the first boss, it's so button mashy, and I'm not good at button mashing. Like the second and third bosses, though, I actually managed to beat on my first try, surprisingly. It took me a while to figure out their mechanics, but like once I did, it was a cakewalk. There were a lot of moments that really triggered my agoraphobia, though.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Lots of large open spaces got bothering you.
Yeah.
Understandable.
I've also started playing Pokemon Violet, so that's fun. I am surprised at how early on you can catch routes.
Really?
Yeah, like, I have this thing whenever I play Pokemon games. I always play as a girl named Jen, and I always make sure to include a female Gardevoir in my party if possible.
Oh wait, I was about to say, well, now you can have a genderless robot guy, and then like, wait, no, that's Scarlet. No,
I think... No, I think Iron Valiant is Violet, and I think...
Yeah, Violet.
Yeah, Scarlet has something.
Violet's the future one, Scarlet's the past one. I keep getting those confused.
Yeah.
So yes, you can have a robot Gardevoir, essentially.
Yeah.
Robot Garter Goat Lade. Garden-laid.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I'd get Scarlet or Violet at first. It really was gonna depend on how I was feeling about Red Daniel at the time. I'd either get Scarlet out of respect for him, but I ended up going with Violet just to spite him.
Yeah.
Alright, so, we good?
My food mà
Oh.
Meow?
Meow.
yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
cat is, that cat is just so having a great time right now.
Yeah. In here in.
That is a
Again.
very, very sunny cat you have.
Yeah. Hopefully the other one are doing it too.
Oh, man.
Alright.
I mean the other one wait. Hopefully.
So, before I get to like the grand finale I had planned for the Daniel verse, I have what seems to be the final two talking points on my list, unless any more suddenly pop into my head. That is Justin's revival and debt, along with Jack's downfall. So, the plan was that Justin would, of course, eventually be revived along with everyone else from Daniel's soul, but he'd end up ascending to a sphere and effectively replacing the Archangel. So basically, Jack succeeds in his plan that he had in Dark Subconscious. He gets a fear in his debt.
Yay.
Specifically, he gets a fear that owes him 7 debts. 1 for each of the friends that he revived.
Oops.
But Justin would be very clear on the terms. He'd set a handful of limits, but the 2 most prominent ones that would come up is that once Jack has absolved Justin of a debt, that's it. That debt is officially stricken off the record. And 2, he cannot ask Justin to do the same thing twice.
Makes sense.
Now, how this would come into play is Daniel would find out about those conditions, and he'd like devise a plan. He'd like talk to Tony and be like, okay, if we're gonna outplay an eldritch trickster, we're gonna need the help of an eldritch trickster. So I'm gonna go to Red Daniel and talk to him about this.
So,
Yeah.
So at this point, I had plans to I've already used living with Red Daniel to retcon a lot of who Red Daniel is as a person, and I was eventually planning to have him go through a little face turn of his own and become more of an anti-hero than anything. And by this point in the story, he has opened up his own nightclub. And Daniel and Tony go there, and Daniel's just like, okay, wait out here. I'm going to talk to him alone. Let me do this. And this is all told from Tony's perspective. Daniel goes inside, and after some time has passed, Daniel just storms back out, just frustrated, you know what? Fuck him, he's useless. We're going to go take care of Justin on our own. So,
responding to a conversation with Red Daniel with, you know what, fuck him, he's useless, is a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah, so Daniel and Tony, they go and talk to Justin, and Jack, seizing the moment, just makes good on one of Justin's debt, and he's just like, Justin, I want you to kill Daniel Xavier Ferris. And Justin does exactly that. This was hinted at in the Visions of the Future thing, where the two of them would clash. But what ended up happening is Daniel just holds back, doesn't use any fear powers, doesn't even use burner at all. He just doesn't fight and ends up taking a lethal blow, gets stabbed right through the chest, slumps over, heart stops. Jack actually does his own scan, confirms that, yep, this is Daniel Ferris and he is indeed dead. You are absolved of one of your debts.
Yay!
And so yeah, Tony is just devastated by this, and then
Understandably.
he like goes and like confronts Red Daniel over like not helping them, and when Daniel learns that his precious Danny boy has been killed, he is just livid. And so he and Tony both go and confront Justin again, but while Justin is ready to fight, Red Daniel just completely calmly tells him, I didn't come here to pick a fight with you, Justin. I just need to confirm something. Did that asshole Jack uphold his end of the bargain and clear you of that debt? And Justin would just nod and say, like, yes. For killing Daniel Xavier Ferris, I have been absolved of one debt. And so Justin, or Red Daniel, would just be like, good. That's all I wanted to know. And then he'd just walk away, and Tony would follow after him like, wait, so that's it? That's all you're going to do? And Red's just like, just shut up and tag along. And then Tony would, shortly after that, get a text saying that Daniel's body has disappeared from the morgue. And so he just, like, bring that up with Red Daniel, just be like, okay, what the hell
I'm
is
gonna
happening
need a guess
here?
on what just happened here.
Yeah.
I figured this out already, I think.
Yeah, probably.
And
So they go back.
Yes, so they switch places.
All right, Kuro.
So Kuro just die. Oh, direct food. Okay.
All right, so we'll give Kuro a second there. Anyway, my starter was Sprigatito.
Ah. How are you enjoying everyone's new favorite horny Pokemon choice?
I mean, fuck, I'm all for it. I did a fucking Smash or Pass video. I don't care at this point.
That is true. I forgot you did that. I remember, without incriminating myself here, purely out of curiosity, I did a search on Rule 34 for all three of the starters to see which one had the most hits. And no surprise, it was Sprigatito.
I'm mad.
Okay, so Red Daniel and Tony go back to the nightclub. They take a shortcut through the Vice world, and then they go into like the manager's office where Red Daniel was set up, and they see Daniel is just body is just like sprawled out on a table, and Tony's like, okay, what the actual fuck? And Red Daniel's just like, all right, plan worked, you can get up, asshole. And then Daniel's corpse just like stretches, yawns, his wound closes up, his hair and eyes turn red, and he's just like, and I was having such a good nap.
Of course.
And then the Red Daniel.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. Red
'Cause,
Daniel.
He's a lot harder to kill than most.
Yeah, he technically did die. Because what he did was, since he's connected to the hive mind and is hemokinetic, he can just stop his heart at will and then just have his consciousness regress into the network that is the high blood.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, Justin did technically kill a variant of Daniel. And Justin did clear him of that debt. Or Jack, I mean, cleared Justin of the debt. I get names mixed up. They're J's. Ugh. Anyway.
J names. Anyone with a name that starts with J is awful.
Yeah, so. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and since Jack can't ask Justin to do the same thing twice. He can't repeat the deal.
Yep, he can't make him kill Dan again.
Yep. So now, where this would lead up to is that this whole thing would come to light. Jack would be pissed, but he'd realize that Daniels played a pretty good hand and outwitted him. In fact, there would be like a moment between Daniel and Tony after this reveal that Tony's like, how the hell did you come up with such a convoluted plan that actually worked? And like a lot of what Tony's character development was in Phase 2 was just him having moments of, okay, what would Daniel do in this situation? Probably something stupid and reckless, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a risk here. And then what Daniel would say to Tony at that point was he'd just look at Tony and just be like, I just looked at myself and thought, what would Tony do in this situation? So yeah, that would have been that character moment between them.
Been nice.
But then what would happen is the three of them, Daniel, Red, and Tony, they'd be in confrontation with Jack and Justin again. And Jack would just realize, okay, good move, counter move. Then he'd snap his fingers and just say, Justin, I want you to kill Anthony Heliosin. At which point, Justin would make a move to attack Tony, but Daniel would just suddenly manifest the Fear Sword, come between them and stop the attack, and just say like, I don't want to do this, Justin, but I'm not going to let you hurt him.
Yep. And I'm assuming that's how Justin's gonna die again.
Well, no, I don't plan on killing Justin. I didn't plan on... Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said earlier Justin's revival and following death.
Oh, no, Jack's downfall. That's what we're getting to right now.
Okay.
So,
I misheard, I guess.
There was sort of a vision that Daniel had in Phase 1 where he foresaw what he thought at the time was going to be Dark Daniel, but like, of course, the truth of it is that he inherited Dark Daniel's code, so it was actually him. And he had a vision of himself wielding the Fear Sword, Jack wielding a red energy sword out of his own energy, and then a third figure wielding a silver energy sword of chaos mana. And what would happen is that Daniel would be fighting Justin, and then the reveal would come that Justin's death was the cost for Daniel's powers to awaken, at which point Daniel would snap. He would just instantly knock Justin out, and then just turn to Jack furious, and just be like, you got my friend killed. And then, like, Jack would realize he's fucked and would just take off, and Daniel would just be like, Red, make sure Justin doesn't go anywhere. I'm going after him. And Red Daniel, just obeying the order, pricks his finger, crystallizes Justin's body in his blood so that it won't go anywhere, and he just gives him thumbs up. So Daniel, this is all told from Tony's perspective. Daniel goes after Jack, and what Tony does afterwards is he's just like, there's a fear present. I think I can tip the odds. Red, I'm going to need some of your blood. And it's like, how much? As much as you can spare. Then Tony takes some of Red's blood and starts drawing on the ground. And Red's like, what you doing there? And he's like, oh, just using a party trick I've been saving for a while.
Oh.
Then it would be a post from Daniel's perspective where he's fighting against Jack. And then a third figure would enter the fray. None other than a freshly revived Ace of Chaos.
Nice.
So yeah, the Ace of Chaos would just be like, this has been a long time coming. Let's ice this fucker. And so they work together and kill Jack.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not the first time I've killed Jack. He did die in Paradan's timeline.
Yep.
by being thrown into the Fountain of Youth and then electrocuted, which somehow met the conditions for him to stay dead. I don't know how that worked. I made a lot of this up as I was going along. I ought to talk about some of the other timelines real quick. So, Dark Daniel, I feel bad I never gave him a good fight scene. I mean, he did have fight scenes, but I don't feel like any of them really showcased what he could do. I do plan on eventually rectifying that and living with Red Daniel. I've already had a badass moment where he saved me from a gigantic hostile mosquito monster. But yeah, like, his whole motive was killing Daniel and taking his place.
Yep.
But he eventually, in the end, saw like the error of his ways, and he sacrificed himself to help Daniel score a killing blow on the Archangel.
Yep.
Then Red Daniel's timeline, God, I could talk circles around his backstory, but I'm gonna keep it brief. His whole deal is
I believe we did get his backstory, didn't we?
yeah, I've covered it a few times, but long story short, he basically got brainwashed into doing something horrible, then got left alone with the knowledge of what he'd done. The guilt destroyed him, almost offed himself, ended up becoming a blood vessel to get rid of the guilt. Then he met a guy, fell in love, guy gets brutally murdered by the game master, and he ends up fighting back against the game master, overindulges in the Red Cap's power to the point that she's practically begging him to stop because he's going too wild with it. And then he gets sucked into the Danielverse. And then Breaker, I've been meaning to flesh out his backstory. He's also been known in universe as Enhanced Daniel, but he comes from a universe where the president of the United States was an Oathbreaker, and the vice president was a Thoughtborn, and they effectively started World War III and led the world to ruin. So,
Just going to say, I did not expect. To go into the backstory of this version of Daniel, I started with, see, the president of the United States. It's just not where I expected that going.
Yeah, debatably a worse president than, you know what, let's not finish that sentence. But we all know where I was going with it.
Yes, we do.
Anyway, his whole deal was that the world fell to ruin, the fears basically all killed each other until there was only a few left. And I've never really addressed this in universe, but Breaker was actually a Death Seeker. His whole reason...
He wants to die.
Yeah, his whole reason for interacting with Calloway so much is because he remembered his universe's version of Calloway, and he wanted to die in battle against a worthy opponent, and he was hoping this universe's Calloway could potentially do the job. He did end up getting killed by the Fury, but that... yeah, that's that.
Not exactly the death he wanted.
Yeah. God, I just had a thought. What was it? Never mind, moving on. Anyway, so they all went through some horrible shit, and they were understandably kind of playing antagonistic roles because of it. In Paradan's timeline, they were worse.
Good.
Because Paradan, upon time traveling, decided to instigate that whole multiverse crossover thing ahead of schedule. So in Paradan's timeline, they suffered through all that horrible shit, and then they had time afterwards for it to sink in and really affect their personalities. In the main Danielverse, they just get sucked up into the Danielverse immediately after and don't really have the time to grieve. They just suddenly in this new place having to figure shit out. So they don't go down nearly as dark a path as they did for Paradan.
Yep. Well, breaking it down. Hero.
What?
Base?
What?
What?
What happened?
Nothing.
Is there a hiccup
was
on
just saying-
your end?
Everything seems fine here.
I don't know what happened.
The last thing I said was just good job breaking it, Hero.
Oh, I didn't that one.
All right. Trying to think if I had anything else I wanted to talk about. Pretty much made it through the whole list of stuff, so it's basically just all I have left is like the grand finale of Phase 2 leading into Phase 3. Phase 2 would end with Daniel would just spend a bit of time just acting really secretive, hiding stuff from all of his friends to the point that he ends up getting marked by the black dog. And everyone's not sure, like, what exactly is going on with him. But, there was, like, a thing about Daniel's destiny and that it could go one of two ways, with him either conquering the fears or sacrificing himself to protect his friends. And that the reason his destiny is split is because of Paradan's existence. He's either destined to grow up and become Paradan, or for Paradan to enter his timeline and the two of them meet. And so one of them is destined to defeat the fears, the other is destined to die.
Which one that's going to be is basically decided on how they play out.
Yep, anyway, it's Paradan. Paradan dies.
Aw.
Yeah,
I would expected, but so aw.
yeah, it'd be like a moment where, like, as he's dying, he'd hand off his phone, and we'd get to see post 461, the final video he recorded before time traveling. And it would reveal that he mentioned a few times that he didn't know where the legendary sword, the Godslayer, was, but he did know where it would eventually be. And the video actually shows it in the blind man's possession, but before he can get it, Slender Man shows up, kills the blind man, and destroys the sword. Also, I do need to talk. I've been meaning to mention this about Slender Man. I originally treated Slender Man as like one of the fears, but I kind of retconned that eventually. That he's similar to the fears, but he's actually kind of a different thing.
A pretty fair take.
Yeah. Anyway, after Daniel gets the location of the Godslayer, he ends up tracking it down before Slender Man can getting it, collecting it from the blind man. And like by this point, Daniel's actually starting to undergo some of the Danielverse or the Devil Killer mutations himself. Like his skin's getting paler, his eyelids are getting darker. And he just shrugs it off like, I guess, going to become Paradan at some point. Whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daniel, who has by this point gotten his black vest back, because that was iconic to him. And yeah. Anyway, Daniel he wouldn't kill the fears, but he would effectively subjugate them. So that they basically decide, like, okay, we're not fucking with this guy anymore. We'll just stand down and back the fuck off. So he does basically conquer the fears just like he was destined to do.
Yay.
Except for Slender Man. He ends up having one last scuffle with Slender Man, with Tony there by his side. And he ends up striking Slender Man down. and all seems victorious. He seems to have won, but then, like, out of nowhere, he just, like, suddenly falls to his knees and is just slouching forward. And Tony's like, hey, are you okay, man? But then, Daniel would look up at Tony to reveal that his face is suddenly missing. And then he'd stand up, and his limbs would just start stretching out. He'd look around a bit in confusion, then looking down at his hand, which still has the Godslayer in it. Then he'd turn to Tony, preparing to attack with the Godslayer, and Tony would just realize what had happened and just flee, and that would have been the end of Phase 2.
Hi. So Daniel just becomes the Slender Man, huh?
Yeah, he gets possessed.
Lovely.
And that would lead into Phase 3, which was planned to be a video game.
Oh.
Yeah,
interesting. No, I gotta say, your video game was good. You have a knack for making video games, so.
Yeah, well, it's admittedly the idea I originally had for it was like super ambitious. I had like a Devil May Cry ass game in mind. But like the game would basically feature 2 story modes. One where you play as Tony, and another where you get to play as a newly revived Paradan.
Hey.
And like Paradan's segments would be all about like combat and shit. Tony's
be like, is Tony the one who's a detective, or is that Sal?
Yeah, that was Tony. So Tony's his whole gameplay segment would be less about combat and more about like puzzles and shit.
Call of Cthulhu-esque, where it's more about trying to avoid dying while figuring out mysteries.
Yep, and it would be revealed over the course of the game that why Daniel was being so secretive towards the end there is that he knew the final showdown was coming. So what he was doing was using the Empty City's power to basically construct elaborate dungeons to hide the weapons he had accumulated up till that point. And those would be levels in the games that Tony and Paradan would go through to collect all of those weapons. Like Paradan, naturally, he'd get his rapier and the katana. He'd also I was planning on giving Daniel a scythe that he got from Justin. I was gonna call it like the Air Halo or something. So like, Paradan would get that. He'd get.
That's cool.
He'd dual wield the Gunblade and Goblin King, which were Zeke and Algeria's final weapons in Dark Subconscious. And Tony would get like the yeah.
So I don't remember if this was a thing, but I vaguely was the like burning scythe thingy that Faceless had in his story at one point. Was it Dark Subconscious at one point?
Yeah, it was Faceless's final weapon.
Right, yeah. I was like, I think I remember that. I literally, Grinning Reaper, that was the name of its original wielder.
Yeah, the Grinning Reaper.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what her name was.
Yeah, anyway, Tony, I don't remember what all weapons you get. I know he'd get the Sonic Sword, and they'd both get access to Burner. Oh yeah, I forgot to bring up, Burner, actually got broke in Paradan's original timeline. That's why he no longer has it.
I don't remember what Burner is.
Burner is the Wakizashi that Daniel used.
It's actually just reminded me, I don't remember. I assume he died at some point during Malkator's original blog, but I don't actually remember what happened to Ren.
Ren?
Okay, the Thorn Prince.
Thorn Prince was still alive.
Oh, he's just still alive.
Yeah.
Because this thing is like, I feel like he just kind of disappeared from the story, but I don't remember if he died or not.
But I'm pretty sure he was last seen on a team with Puppy Dog.
might be it. And then Puppy Dog's story just never continued. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it just occurred to me, like, I don't remember what happened to From Prince.
Yeah, anyway, the game would effectively end with them, like, cleansing Slenderman from Daniel and basically, like, sealing him away somehow. Yeah, and, then at some point the Knower would come in and reveal that there is, in fact, a way for Paradan to return to his old timeline.
My God.
And he'd do so for Paradan to discover that there are still some fragments of humanity still alive and that there was still hope for his timeline. And I also think Justin and Red Daniel would probably come in as like DLC characters or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure it would have been a really cool game.
But yeah, anyway, I think...
Yeah. Making a Devil May Cry style game is definitely a much larger step than an RPG Maker game. So
yeah,
someday, yeah.
But I think that's everything.
Awesome.
Wow, we have been going for so long.
How long is it? Jesus, that is. Yeah, we've been going for a little bit under 2 hours now.
Yeah, so anyone got like closing thoughts?
I'm really glad we laughed at your story, so we eventually met you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, for anyone wondering how I became a member of the Fear Mythos, originally my story was just going to be Slenderman related stuff, but then I discovered the Fear Mythos and I was just like, yeah, I want to do that. And I created Malcator's blog and I like commented on a bunch of other people's blogs, and then I looked at my analytics, found where the traffic was coming from, and found the forum, which I ended up joining.
Yeah, and on that forum we had a thread that wasn't meant to be about making fun of other blogs, but it was basically just looking for non like Fearthos member related Fearthos stories, and someone, I don't remember who, had found Malcator blog, and we all kind of started reading it, and like it wasn't bad per se, but there was a lot of like amateurish qualities to it originally, which for early blog, not a problem.
Yeah.
But so we kind of probably a little mean, honestly.
Yeah.
So when Ace showed up and it was like, "Hi, I'm doing this," and I'm like, "Oh." So that was our initial interaction.
Yeah, my early work was cringe as fuck.
I mean, it still had a lot of the better aspects of your later writing as well. It just also had a lot of aspects that are, got removed over time and experience.
Yeah, I got my start as an author by writing Sonic the Hedgehog fan fiction, so getting into Fear Mythos stuff is kind of a transition. But yeah, my writing's improved over the years.
That's the same way DJ got into writing, so...
Yeah. I do have a confession I need to make regarding my current blog for the Golden Age, Science of Terror.
Oh.
I have never been fully sober while writing that blog. I have always had at least one beer in hand.
And answers the questions about all the things.
Yeah, so...
you are surprisingly still very coherently drunk.
Yeah, the entire blogs, there's one great big drunk post, but there was one post in particular that was so long and I went through so many beers writing it that by the end I was just like, I don't know about this. I should get someone else's thoughts on this. And that ended up being you, Sam.
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, it was the post where Tyler Vines, who another confession, he was originally based off of my old collaborative Let's Play partner, Blaze the Fire Lord.
I've watched a bit of your older Let's Plays. I remember him.
Yeah, but yeah, that post was when he became the Thorned Prince, and since then I
Version of
try
Dawn
not
Prince,
to.
yes.
Since then, I try not to drink too much while writing. I'll have like one beer, and then I'll just be like, "All right, save document and continue tomorrow." That's why a lot of my more recent posts have kind of taken me a while.
They take longer to write, probably have slightly fewer spelling and grammar mistakes, but quality doesn't seem to change much when you're drunk.
Yeah, I have like looked back on some of the earlier posts, saw inconsistencies, but they were always just like negligible.
I've been writing lately on this one site. I'm not going to say which, but one of my favorite things about that site is I have so many times just written something and been able to immediately go back, look for stuff, and been like, "Oh no, that's inconsistent. Let me fix that real quick." There, now it's always said that. I like having the ability to do that because I do try to keep at least some basic idea of where a story's going, but that doesn't mean I'm always fully sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes a potential plot twist is just too good to when it suddenly comes up to have, and the fact that I haven't foreshadowed it at all doesn't. I'm not going to let that get in my way.
All
Which is a
right.
terrible way to write. All right.
I guess we can
Happy
just...
Explodiversarry.
Happy Explodiversary. Guess it's time to wrap this up by eating a jelly bean.
Still doing that, okay.
Hell yeah! Berry blue or toothpaste? Toothpaste! Yay! Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for watching. If this gets any views, that is. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you all for watching. Peace out!